an elementary education major and psychology minor. So for my project, I did an evaluation of how inclusive and culturally sensitive the US education system is. First, I will discuss why it is important to have a culturally inclusive education. After taking this class, I'm sure you have a pretty good idea of why, but I'm going to show you some data so you can physically see its importance. Then I'll present some data on the US and their education system, allowing you to make your own conclusion whether the US education system is culturally inclusive. Then we'll take a look at some cool things some other countries have done, focusing on multicultural education. And then lastly, I'll discuss how this knowledge has prepared me and how I will implement it in my own classroom. To start off, I wanted to read you a quote so we all have the same understanding of what we're talking about when we say a culturally inclusive classroom. So this quote says, "A culturally inclusive classroom is one where students and staff alike recognize, appreciate, and capitalize on diversity so as to enrich the overall learning experience. Fostering a culturally inclusive learning environment encourages all individuals, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, religious affiliation, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, or political beliefs, to develop personal contacts and effective intercultural skills." For education to be culturally sensitive and inclusive, well, studies have found that students who have better experiences with diversity and inclusion in their school have more academic success. We found that diversity and inclusion, out of all these factors, have the second highest correlation with GPA. The US education system, culturally sensitive and inclusive. First, we're going to take a look at who our students are. So this graph shows the population of US residents ages 5 to 17-year-olds, and it's divided by race and ethnicity. So in 2017, we had 51% white, 14% black, 25% Hispanic, 5% Asian, 1% American Indian / Alaska Native, and 4% two or more races. At the population of teachers based on their race and ethnicity, we see that we have a much higher percentage of teachers that are white than students. In 2016, 80% of our teachers were white, and only 7% black, 9% Hispanic, 2% Asian, and 1% two or more races. This is an issue because our studies are showing us that students have better attendance, fewer suspensions, more positive attitudes towards school, higher test scores, graduation rates, and college attendance if they have a teacher who matches their race or ethnicity. So a lot of our standardized tests, like the SAT, are focused on skills such as critical thinking and problem solving, skills that are highly valued in individualistic societies. So we may see immigrant students or refugees scoring lower on these tests because in their country they are not focused on these skills. And then this chart is showing the breakdown of the SAT scores based on race, and we see that Asian and white students perform significantly better than Black, Hispanic, Pacific Islanders, or American Indians. As we saw earlier, another factor that is highly correlated with grades and academic success is feelings toward diversity and inclusion in a school. So a survey was given to 12,000 students over 120 different schools in the US, and they found that Black and Hispanic students had a much lower perception of diversity and inclusion in their schools than white and Asian students. So now we're going to take a look at what other countries are doing to create culturally sensitive and inclusive education. So first we're going to take a look at Switzerland, which is kind of a rock star when it comes to education in my eyes. They have been doing some really cool stuff. So I looked at one school called Prefier International Alpine School. It's a boarding school in the Swiss Alps, which is a bilingual school which teaches their curriculum in English and French. And they are focused on encouraging students to share and create their culture and traditions. Their mission statement is by encouraging different codes and customs, they acquire an openness that time will never erode. Bilingualism at Peripherally means keeping one's roots, one's culture, whilst becoming receptive to difference. So then I looked at a school from India called the Dirk White Lotus School. The school is located in the Himalayan mountains. It's targeted for students of the Tibetan descent, and it focuses on teaching traditional Ladakhi culture. A quote from their website is combining modern technology such as solar energy and thick insulating walls against the cold and traditional Tibetan Buddhist culture of do no harm. The school is a sustainable model that gives students the best of both. So now we're going to take a look at how to create a culturally sensitive and inclusive classroom. A lot of schools tend to just focus on tangible culture, things such as music, art, and food. But to be a culturally inclusive classroom, we need to also look at intangible culture such as values, beliefs, and feelings. So these are a few strategies. Number one, create a culturally inclusive environment. This would be having posters and books in your classroom that are representative of your students and their cultures. Second would be teach students to respect and appreciate their own culture. So for this, maybe you could have parents come in as guest speakers and talk about their traditions and cultures. And the next one is provide opportunities to explore cultures present in the community. This one you could take students to a museum or have guest speakers from the community come in to talk to your students. And lastly, present core curriculum in a multicultural manner. For example, teaching about Christopher Columbus, you would want to teach them from both the perspectives of the explorers and the Native American point of view. So now it's up to you. What do you think? Is the US education system culturally sensitive and inclusive?